tells the story that he was once giving a sanctuary tour to his synagogue's preschool class. As they approached the doors of the Grand Ark, he asked the students what they thought was inside. "Nothing at all. It's empty," one of them answered. "I know, a new car," answered another one. "It's a really old book in there," snarled a third. But then, the fourth and final child to answer proclaimed, "No, it's not. It's none of those things. There's a mirror in there." There's truth, of course, to each of those answers. For those who are disconnected from Judaism and Jewish community, the Ark is empty because it feels devoid of meaning. For others still, Judaism is all surface shine, warm and sentimental, but lacking personal challenge and demand. There are those for whom Judaism is anachronistic, filled with antiquated notions that have little to offer to modern living today. But for those who are willing to gaze in deeply, the Ark does indeed contain the most precious of mirrors. It's a mirror that reflects back to us the fullest truths of ourselves, our high points, our hypocrisies. At the same time, it reveals for us the very best of who we can be individually, collectively. It provides a path for us to choose, one upon which we can live our lives with meaning and purpose. The challenge with this mirror view, of course, is that Judaism, its history, its wisdom, its communal meaning and connection, none of these have agency in and of themselves. For us to really see what Judaism has to offer, we have to gaze in deeply. A surface glance won't reveal much of anything, because Judaism is only made real, profound in our lives when we choose to bring it into our lives actively, intentionally. Take this week's Torah portion, Re'eh, as just one example. This portion in the middle of the book of Deuteronomy opens with a familiar refrain. It's one that we're hearing again and again between now and the first day of Yom Kippur, when we'll hear it in Nitzavim. "See, I set before you blessing and curse, bracha v'klala." The Torah goes on to detail for us the paths to blessing and curse, but it ultimately leaves it up to us which road to take. Of note is that the road to curse, or what we might better understand as a life devoid of purpose and meaning, well, this road is paved by the misplaced belief that fulfillment can be derived through the pursuit of our desires, the pursuit of happiness, as it were. Whereas the foundation of the road to blessing is made up of exactly the opposite notion, that our individual lives are about so much more than ourselves, than our own self-interests. In fact, again and again, Re'eh compels our ancestors and us to understand that the path to blessing is not reached through accumulation of possessions or for looking out for number one, despite the strong temptations of life, believe it or not, then and now, to follow these types of pursuits. In fact, the portion equates all of these pursuits with idolatry itself. Instead, the path to blessing is devoted almost entirely to our Jewish obligation to be engaged with life beyond the close-up view we see if we hold that mirror right up to our face, inviting us instead to pull the mirror back, revealing all the others who surround us near and far, expanding our gaze to include and to draw in those who would otherwise be ignored, namely the community and society's most vulnerable. But I want to make something clear. This portion is not about politics or government or outsourcing. It is about each person's individual responsibility and accountability, really, to the larger community, specifically to those who need our support in and around our midst. The portion details revolutionary guidelines for each of us, asserting a moral mandate built on foundations of outward care, empathy, responsibility, and obligation to each other. From remembering to take care of the Levite, essentially they were a civil servant because he had no way of sustaining himself otherwise, to setting aside 1/10 of our produce or earnings for the greater good, to the establishment of Shemitah, the sabbatical year, when all debts and servitude were to be released. Over and over again, the Torah offers to us practices that remind us that our lives come to have the greatest meaning and significance, not when we consume blessing, but rather when we become a blessing to and for someone else. But this only happens if we choose the path of blessing. And again, that choice remains entirely up to us. The good news is that Jewish tradition insists that it is really never too late to make the right choice, to choose the path of blessing. And we're offered a collective opportunity to do just that each and every year, right around this time, when the month of Elul comes around. Elul is the final month of the Jewish year, and it begins next week. And it offers each of us a mirror, as it were, into which we are given the chance to gaze deeply and honestly too. And in doing so, acknowledge both the beauty of our lives, but also the blemishes, to reflect back on the paths we've chosen that have gotten us to where we are today, to determine if the person we see reflected back to us is the very best person we can be. And if not, revealing to us once again the choice of which path to take, the one towards curse or the one towards blessing. There's a great 19th century Hasidic master known as the Kotzker Rebbe, and he teaches that in order to understand the highest, most noblest truth of existence, one need only take the 9th commandment, thou shalt not lie, and add the indirect object of yourself to the end of it. With this reflexive framing of you should not lie to yourself, one comes to see what truly can be found in the Ark, not just the mirror of Torah, but the mirror of our souls. Could there be a more precious gift? Shabbat Shalom.